You ever get that feeling like you're just trying to make sense of everything? The world's so complex, right?
Yeah.
Finding that real clarity can feel almost impossible sometimes.
Yeah, it really can.
Well, that's pretty much what we try to do here on the Deep Dive. We dig into the sources you're interested in, pull out those core ideas, the stuff that actually matters.
And today, yeah, we're jumping into a really foundational book on leadership. It's Warren Bennis's On Becoming a Leader.
Right, the revised one,
Yeah.
20th anniversary edition.
That's the one, based on his original from '89. And, I mean, Peter Drucker called it Bennis's most important book. That tells you something right there.
Wow, okay, so yeah, high praise. Our mission then for this deep dive is really to pull out that timeless wisdom, spanning the different times Bennis wrote in, and see how it applies now.
Exactly, because it's not just what leadership is, theoretically. It's really about the how. How does someone actually become a leader?
Okay, let's get into it then. Bennis really hammers this point early on about mastering the context.
That's absolutely central to his whole argument. And to really get it, you have to think about the massive shifts, huge shifts, between the first edition and the update.
Yeah, 1989 versus, 2003?
Right. So 89, think about it. The Berlin Wall is literally falling as he's writing, or just after. Soviet Union's still there. The internet, it's like this niche academic thing.
Barely on the radar for most people.
Totally. Fast forward to 2003. Post 9/11 world, the Iraq War is happening, nuclear fears are back.
And the internet is completely dominant.
Oh, yeah. Everywhere.
Yep.
Bennis quotes Thomas Friedman saying it felt like the world was only 10 years old.
Because the change was just that radical.
Exactly. The speed, especially with the internet breaking down all these barriers. He mentions the spat, internet usage doubling like every 100 days back then. Insane speed.
That's almost hard to wrap your head around now.
It is. And the core idea is, okay, leaders need to understand the now, the context they're in, but they also need this agility to handle constant accelerating change. You got to keep learning, keep adapting.
It's interesting, too, how he points out that paradox with technology. Like, it connects a whole globe,
Yeah.
but it doesn't automatically create harmony or understanding.
Not at all. He uses that really jarring image, right? A woman being stoned for adultery, this ancient horror, but it's being watched on modern satellite TV.
Ugh, yeah. That really hits home. Technology marches on, but human behavior or societal progress, not always in sync.
Exactly. It doesn't guarantee ethical progress. And Bennis ties this into the economic shifts, too. You had China really embracing capitalism, the whole dot-com boom, and then the bust.
A new economy roller coaster.
Right. And this growing idea that intellectual capital is key. His insight that power follows ideas, not just your job title. That felt really important then, and maybe even more so now.
Yeah, knowledge work, innovation.
That's where the real influence started shifting.
And it's quite a contrast he draws between, say, the 90s imperial leader, the celebrity CEO.
Oh, yeah.
And then, bam, the wave of scandals hits.
Oh, yeah.
Enron, WorldCom.
Huge scandals. And he doesn't shy away from the numbers, does he? That executive pay gap.
No, he lays it out. By 2000, average CEO making, over 300 times the average worker?
Something like that, yeah. And then just 2 years later, median exec pay around $11 million, while the median worker income was like $30,000.
It's a massive gap. It really paints a picture of potential disconnect.
And all that excess, those ethical failures, it leads Bennis right back to a core principle: integrity.
Absolutely. He uses that Emerson quote, doesn't he? What's become clear to you since we last met?
Yeah. And for Bennis, looking back, the answer was crystal clear. Integrity is everything. It's the foundation, not just following rules, but having that internal moral compass.
And he's also fair, pointing out that we tend to swing wildly with leaders, build them up, then tear them down.
Right. That cycle of praise and blame.
He makes sure to say, look, despite the scandals, there are tons of good, honorable leaders out there doing great work. People like Sidney Harmon.
Sidney Harmon, yeah. He held him up as an example of someone who really fostered engagement, transparency, actually listened.
Which leads perfectly into another big point: followership. It's not just about the leader.
So crucial and often overlooked. Bennis talks about great followership and needing a culture where people feel safe to speak up, candor.
That Harmon Clack story is something else. In every business, there is always someone who knows exactly what is going on. That person should be fired.
It's provocative, right? But the point is, you need to hear those uncomfortable truths, which makes the counterexample he uses so tragic.
The Challenger disaster. Roger Boisjoly.
Yeah. A devastating case where the warnings, the unwelcome truths were ignored. The insight there is just massive. Leadership needs that upward flow of honest information.
It really drives home that leadership isn't some solo performance.
Definitely not. And that connects right to his ideas on collaboration. He famously said, "The Lone Ranger is dead."
Right. Big achievements happen when leaders and followers really work together. He wrote that other book, Organizing Genius, about it.
Exactly, exploring how great leaders build and lead these great groups. It takes a specific skill set. Vision, yes, but also rallying people, integrity, coaching, curating talent.
A whole different kind of leadership than the lone hero myth.
Totally different. And Bennis sees these major disruptions like 9/11 or the dot-com crash as crucibles.
Crucibles, like forging moments.
Yeah, exactly. Times of intense pressure that test people and can actually forge new leaders. He quotes Abigail Adams about hard times creating strong character. It's in those moments that leadership qualities really emerge.
Okay, so that seems like a good point to talk about the specific competencies Bennis identified. He boils it down to 4 essential ones.
He does. 4 core competencies. First one is engaging others with shared meaning. So having a vision, but also being persuasive, empathetic enough to get people invested in it.
Makes sense. What's number 2?
Number 2 is having a distinctive voice. This is about purpose, self-confidence, but confidence that comes from knowing yourself, and emotional intelligence. He kind of contrasts Al Gore and George W. Bush here, just as examples of different styles.
Okay. Voice, meaning, what else?
Third is integrity. We talked about this, but it's that fundamental moral compass character. He mentions McCullough's take on Truman character being the bedrock, especially in tough spots.
Right. And the last one?
The fourth is adaptive capacity. This is huge. It's the ability to react smartly and quickly to all that change we talked about. Agility, resilience.
That adaptive capacity idea feels incredibly relevant right now. The compass versus map analogy he uses.
From Carl Weick, yeah. It's brilliant, isn't it? Focus on your direction, your values, your compass, because the map, the detailed plan, might be useless tomorrow.
So what goes into that adaptive capacity?
Well, Bennis breaks it down. Resilience, obviously bouncing back, being a first-class noticer, really paying attention to what's changing around you. Creativity is key. And interestingly, the ability to find and learn from mentors.
Mentors. That's part of adapting.
Yeah, he makes this really interesting parallel to a study on baboons by Robert Sapolsky. Older males who built connections, sort of mentored younger ones, actually lived longer. It highlights how relationships and learning from others boosts resilience.
Wow, okay. Unexpected connection.
Isn't it? And he points to Arthur Levitt Jr., former SEC chair, as someone who really exemplified that adaptive capacity throughout his career.
So it feels like all 4 of these competencies, in a way, circle back to what Bennis keeps emphasizing.
His core message. Yeah.
Which is about discovering and really being your authentic self. Knowing who you are. He quotes William James, right? This is the real me.
Exactly. That deep self-knowledge, being true to yourself, that's the surest path Bennis sees to becoming an effective leader. It's the starting point for everything else.
So let's shift a bit.
Yeah.
Why did Bennis think leadership mattered so much in the first place? He wrote the first book, Leaders, then shifted to On Becoming a Leader, focusing more on the how.
Right. The first book was more about the what's, the characteristics. This one is about the journey, the development. And he was definitely responding to this widespread feeling, where are the leaders?
That sense of a leadership vacuum.
Yeah. But his take was interesting. He argued it wasn't just about individual failings, though those existed. It reflected this larger feeling of a world spinning kind of out of control. Too much change, too much complexity.
So leaders become even more important in that kind of environment.
Precisely. He gives 3 basic reasons why they're indispensable. First, pretty straightforward. Organizations need effective leaders to, be effective. Performance, ethics, it all flows from the top.
Okay. Organizational effectiveness.
Second, in times of chaos and change, leaders are like anchors. They provide direction, stability, hope. They help people navigate the uncertainty.
Guides through the storm, kinda.
Exactly. And third, and this ties back to the scandals, leaders are vital for the integrity of our institutions. He used Wall Street's damaged reputation after crises, Enron, WorldCom, all as examples showing why ethical leadership is crucial for public trust.
And he didn't just stick to business, right? He mentioned other institutions, too.
No, he broadened it out. He pointed to issues in the Catholic Church at the time, even a scandal involving hacking university admissions at Princeton. It show this wasn't just a corporate problem, it was about institutional health across the board.
The context, again, he brings in technology and globalization impacting all of this too.
Absolutely. The rise of niche markets, for example, how traditional giants, print media, the big TV networks, airlines were suddenly struggling, global competition heating up, China becoming a major economic force. All this changes the game for leaders.
Makes the job harder, more complex.
Definitely. And he worried about this trend. He called it the societal disease of our time.
Which was
short-term thinking, just focusing on the next quarter, the immediate win, instead of the long haul. He uses that great observation from Norman Lear.
Oh, yeah, the TV producer.
Yeah, about how we used to build cathedrals, these lasting monuments, and now we build towers of commerce, focused on quick returns. It's a powerful metaphor for that short-term focus.
It really is. Okay, so context, integrity, long-term view. And then he gives that case study, the cautionary tale of Ed.
Ed, yeah. It's a classic example Bennis uses. Ed knew his stuff, technically, mastered the skills for the job on paper, but he failed. Why? Lack of people skills, fundamentally. Couldn't connect, couldn't inspire. Also lacked conceptual skills, imagination, creativity, and basic things like judgment, taste, and ultimately character.
And trying to just fix the surface behavior didn't work.
Yep. Bennis makes the point that the deeper issues remain. And the kicker, Ed apparently failed upward, got a bigger job somewhere else later.
Oof. We've probably all seen that happen.
Unfortunately, yeah. It highlights that sometimes the system rewards the wrong things.
Okay, so Ed is the cautionary tale. Who's the counterpoint? The positive example.
That would be Norman Lear, the guy who created All in the Family, The Jeffersons, so many groundbreaking shows.
Right, shows that really pushed boundaries back then, often controversial.
Hugely controversial.
Yeah.
But also hugely successful. Lear is Bennis's example of someone who truly mastered the context, not just survived it. He consistently innovated, took risks.
And was successful financially too, right? Not just critically.
Yeah, very successful. But Bennis also highlights Lear's activism founding People for the American Way and his civic engagement, like buying an original copy of the Declaration of Independence to tour it around.
Wow. Patty Chayefsky said something about him putting real Americans on TV.
Yeah, that Lear took television away from the dopey wives and dumb fathers, and in their place he put the American people. Really captured his impact. He reflected the times, warts and all.
So how did Lear master the context? Bennis breaks down his process, doesn't he? Into 4 steps.
He does. 4 key things Lear did. First, becoming self-expressive. Finding his unique voice and using it, not trying to be someone else.
Okay, authenticity again.
Totally. Second, listening to the inner voice, trusting his gut, his convictions. Bennis even connects this to Emerson's self-reliance.
Listening to yourself makes sense. Third
was learning from the right mentors. His grandfather, who taught him one person could make a difference. Even learning from his father, who was flawed but had this optimistic resilience.
So finding wisdom in different places. And the last step.
Fourth, giving oneself over to a guiding vision. Lear truly believed he could use television to make people think, to make a difference. That vision drove him through all the resistance he faced.
Especially early on with All in the Family, I bet.
Absolutely. Networks were terrified of it initially. But his vision, tied to his authentic self, allowed him to push through and genuinely change television. His impact was massive and lasting.
So Lear versus Ed. A really stark contrast in applying these leadership principles.
It's a perfect illustration, yeah.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into Bennis's On Becoming a Leader, what are the big takeaways that really jump out?
For me, it's definitely that constant theme. You have to understand the context, the world you're operating in, and you have to be able to adapt. That's non-negotiable.
Yeah, that adaptive capacity.
Yeah.
And linked to that, the absolute centrality of authenticity and integrity, knowing yourself, acting from your core values.
Couldn't agree more. And the idea that becoming a leader is a process. It's about continuous learning, self-development. It's not a destination you just arrive at.
Right. And the power of having that guiding vision, like Lear did, and expressing your true self through your work.
And seeing Ed and Lear side by side really drives it home. Ed tried to change the outside, the superficial behaviors. Lear worked from the inside out, from his authentic self, his inner voice, his vision. That's the difference Bennis is pointing to.
So maybe final thought then for you listening. In this world, still full of really complex stuff, constant change, how can you tap into that authentic self Bennis talks about?
Yeah, how do you cultivate that inner voice, develop that adaptive capacity? It doesn't matter about your job title. How can you become a leader, a person of influence, right where you are?
Think about your own inner voice. What's it telling you? And what about those crucibles in your own life, those tough times Bennis mentioned? What did they teach you? How did they shape you?
It really comes down to that journey William James mentioned, finding your real me, and then having the courage to lead from that place.
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.